I've been very pleased with what you've been doing lately. You excel at most everything. But there's still one thing you must learn in order to become a true, wise fellow.
What is it, boss? I'll do whatever it takes.
Pay attention, wisdom.
I'm sorry, what?
Pay attention, wisdom.
Pay a till of 2 million?
What? No! Pay attention, wisdom.
Say I love long division?
Pay attention, wisdom.
A day in the life of Barbara Streisand?
Pay attention to wisdom.
I understand, boss.
You may go.
Thank you so much, boss. I won't let you down. Why does he want me to take his poodle to prison?
So, anyway, did you see what she was wearing? Did you see what she had on? She looked like a clown. All she needed was a rubber nose and she'd been set.
Jane.
I'm serious.
I can't believe you. You're just so...
Honest?
Not exactly.
Oh, please, tell me you weren't thinking the same thing.
Okay, but it's one thing to think it. It's completely another thing to actually say it.
Oh, brother. Cookie?
No thanks.
You know, June loves my homemade cookies. Have you seen her lately?
Your sister?
Yeah.
No.
Big as a barn.
Oh, Jane, come on.
Oh, the last time we got together, all I could do to keep from singing is June is busting out all over.
Stop it. Just stop.
What?
Well, you're just so negative.
I know, isn't it fun?
No, it's not really.
Oh, please.
I'm serious. One of these days, someone is going to get hurt.
Someone getting hurt. What if Sue's cryptic warning boded a severe consequence? Consider then, Jane, entering an alternate reality somewhere beyond this realm of light, sight, and sound, when Jane's random caustic tongue transports her into the Twilight Zone.
One of these days, somebody is going to get hurt.
Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. You remember that. Well, there's nothing wrong with some good old-fashioned backbiting. It's the American way, for crying out loud.
Well, I'm not listening anymore.
Oh, well, you might as well just go on home then. I don't know when you became a little Miss Goody Two-Shoes, a little Miss Self-Righteous. I'm getting sick and tired of how overly sensitive you are to everything. Oh, knock it off. Sue, hey, faking sleep may work for your husband, but it's not gonna work for me. Sue, hey, come on, knock it off. Sue, what are you doing? What's wrong? Sue? Sue? What's happened? Oh my goodness! Oh my gosh! What's happening? Oh no! I need to call an ambulance. I can be quiet. I can't hear myself think. Oh, knock it off! What's the number for 911? I know I'm calling up. Lucky! Shut up, you four-legged, flea-ridden mongrel! Knock it off! What do I do now? So you know I love you. You're my very best friend. I don't know what to do. What do I do? I know. Just hide the body. That's what I'll do. I'm gonna hide her body. Come on, Sue. Come on. Work with me here. Come on. Come on. Come on. You can do it. Come on, Sue. Come on. Oh, hi, Kelly. Sue's had a really bad day.
Can I have a cookie? I'm kind of hungry.
No. There's some fruit in the fridge. Have one of those. Well, it's that or nothing.
All right, well, I gotta get going anyways.
Where are you going?
I'm going to a friend's house.
Oh, no, you're not, sister.
Why, Mom?
Because you got homework to do.
I can do it later.
Oh, you go to your room right now.
Mom, that's so unfair.
Unfair? I'll tell you what's unfair. Taking lip off a smart-mouthed, snot-nosed brat like you. Kelly! Kelly! Oh no! Oh honey, I love you. I'm so sorry. Oh my goodness, what have I done? Oh no, baby, please. Oh dear. What am I gonna do? Oh, it's the police. Okay, be cool, be cool. Come in.
Good morning, ma'am. How are you doing? I'm
just-
Officer Frank Carducci
Hi there, officer. Just lying around here with my daughter and my friend.
on the kitchen floor.
Well, we're baking bread and we're watching it rise. That's it.
Okay.
So what are you needing? What do you
Well,
want?
I'm here to raise money for the Policemen's Needy Children Fund.
You are?
Yes, ma'am.
Needy?
That's right. Needy children.
Needy.
Yes, ma'am. We raise money to get kids food that need food.
Needy. I'll tell you, needy bucko. You don't even know the problems I've got going on right now. And I'm sick and tired of you cops knocking door to door, always begging for money for some needy charity. But I could probably help, though. Oh, don't die on me. Please don't die. Please. Oh, no, what have I done? I've even killed a dog. Oh, no. I am so stupid. I've said terrible things. I'm such an imbecile. I probably shouldn't have said that.
Well, folks, words are powerful, are they not? I got to tell you, when I read that script, I thought, wow, I'm not sure how to get out of that one. You know, 'cause that's kind of one of those dark, you're laughing, but it's just so doggone true. Words are so powerful. Proverbs 18:21 says this: the tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. The power of life and death. I'd like us to say, as a body of believers, I'd like us to say these words together, if you would, with me, all right? My words carry the power of life and death. My words can change the course of another person's life. Do you believe that? It's an amazing how much words have power in life and death over in our life. I had a young man in our church that I knew had a way with words, and I had him write something for us, just to kind of tell us the power of words in his own life. Here's what he wrote. He says, it took 7 days to write 2 paragraphs about the power of words. Fitting, isn't it? Wish it had been due to OCD or artistic nonsense. In reality, I dreaded the idea of making a mistake. I stressed over its reception, agonized over every detail. Why? Because to err was to fail. Words will always play an important role in my life. Since 3rd grade, I have written stories. I studied English literature and composition. I taught writing to both college and middle school students. You could even call me a voracious reader. However, he says, the spoken word has affected me more than any other. Structure and form. What was said and how. Every child desires assurance, affection, and praise from his parents and family members. But for me, schoolwork or athletic events were met with responses like, so what? Should I be impressed? No reason you couldn't do better. Or you should be doing that all the time. Every mistake or bad choice, however, was met with derision and punishment. I dreaded my family's presence. Always on edge, I feared making a mistake, and I waited for the inevitable strike. It always came too. As an ADD kid, I was fidgety and unfocused. A boy with OCD, unable to let go of impending weather and any strange sounds I heard. Responses to my defects were not too kind. Lazy, disrespectful, quit being a baby. These were words and phrases I heard more than any other, daily for decades. It is no surprise I freeze and begin to panic when greeted with an important decision. If I make the wrong choice, I assume my life will be ruined forever. The worst part, every time I go to God to God in prayer, a slight worry creeps into the back of my mind that he is waiting to strike also. So, do I believe words are powerful? Your words and my words carry the power of life and death, able to change the course of another person's life. Let me ask you this question. What were possibly the most powerful words ever spoken to you in your life? And do you remember where they were, where you were? Do you remember who spoke it? I'm sure you probably do. Do you remember when it was? Do you remember what those words were at the time? You know, words come in all kinds of packages, and harmful, hurting words sometimes can come in all type of packages, as we saw in the skit a few minutes ago. And sometimes as Christians, we can mask sometimes very, very hurtful words in the name of truth. Sometimes we can say things that are supposed to be funny, or we say it to get a laugh. Sometimes it does get a laugh. Sometimes we say harmful, hurtful things to someone, and we follow it with JK, or only just joking. And basically, if we follow something with just joking, we probably should never have said it in the first place. Sometimes to our friends, sometimes to our spouses, sometimes to our children, we speak comparative words, letting them know that they will never, ever measure up no matter what happens. We use sarcasm. All kinds of packages we can use for hurtful words sometimes. Sometimes it's not even necessarily hurtful words. Sometimes our words can seem to be positive words or flattering words. You know, a number of years ago, I was watching American Idol, and there was a young person early on in the show. And if you've watched Idol, you've seen this way too many times. You know, the young person stood up there, and the judge was in front of them, and they took off. And folks, it was just ugly. It was screeching, and it was off key, and there was nothing that would have let you know that this was a song for good singers. It was bad, okay? And you could tell by the judge's initial reaction, they were trying to be kind, but man, it was just, the person just went on and on and on. And after the song was over, you know, they were trying to still create some kind of a good feeling there. And they said, you know, hey, you obviously like to sing. Yes, I do. Why do you sing? Well, because my grandmother told me I had a good voice. I thought, gosh, Grandma, you either got a problem with hearing, or those were just some of the most unkind, flattering words I'd ever heard in my life. Sometimes we can speak unwisely and unkindly, even with words that are intended to make others feel good. The words had the power of life. I remember being a little old guy, and I had this ball of string, and I was trying, for some reason, I thought this ball of string had to get straightened out, and so I was working at this ball of string, you know, and you know, for every knot you untie, you tie two more, it seems like, you know, and just working at it. And I will never forget my dad stepping up behind me and watching me there for a while, and he said to me, Steve, you really have a lot of patience. You know that in my life from that point on, I believe that when I am come up in a situation, the voice that speaks inside of me is, I am a person with patience. So our words have the power of death, but also of life. And we have the power, in a sense, to change the course of another person's life with the words that we speak. And sometimes we can get into labeling maybe our friends, or especially our children, with some type of diagnosis that they have, or some type of, you know, we can say, you know, they're sorry, they're just being hyper, or sorry, they're just shy. And that child hears that over and over and over again. And guess what? We have determined the course of that child's life and death, the course determined. You know, listen to what Jesus had to say about the power of words in Matthew 5:21 and 22. He says this, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, you shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, is answerable to the court. But Jesus is not done yet. He finishes this by saying, and anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. That's powerful. I mean, those are powerful words, both what it says, what we say to the person by calling them you fool, and what Jesus says to us as we speak those unwise, unkind, hurting, destroying type of words. That is powerful and should let us know how God sees us, because the word that Jesus uses here when he says you fool is actually, the word fool is a word, the word means you are meaningless. You are worthless. You have no value. And God sits close by and watches us speak those unkind, sarcastic, biting, critical words that say to a person, you are a fool. You are worthless. You are stupid. You're without purpose in a sense. We communicate that at least. And God who has created each one of us with an incredible value, with an incredible purpose, with an incredible plan, and knows that we need to buy into who he has created us to be so we can become who he has created us to be in the future. He knows. He stands by and watches as the value and the worth leak out of that person sometimes as we speak harmful, critical, sarcastic, biting words, unwise words to them. Folks, listen. When we speak those kind of words, even in jest, even for a laugh, even as a joke to someone, and we lower their value, we lower how they see themselves, we lower the value that God has placed in them, man, we are keeping them. We are keeping them, in a sense, from following the path and doing what God has designed for them to do. Why would anyone bring to the table or come to the table even if they don't believe they have anything to bring to it? And our words can take the value out of another person's life, thus their purpose, thus their hope in their future. Contrast Matthew 5, 20, 21, and 22 with what Solomon tells his son in the book of Proverbs. Now, if you look at the book of Proverbs, you're going to find all kinds of words or all kinds of parables, Proverbs on words and the tongue and the use of it. But the one I want to look at today for just a moment is this. Proverbs 25:11 says, a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in settings of silver. Now you look at that and you go, why in the world, out of everything else you could look at, take out of Proverbs, why are we looking at this? What, Steve, does that even mean? All right? And it's kind of interesting because as I looked at several different commentators, some different kind of opinions on what it was, there was actually quite a difference of opinion. But here's basically the whole idea. One person thought this was actual pieces of fruit on like a setting of silver, okay? Like a plate of silver. One person thought it was like a picture of apples of gold set in a frame of silver. Someone else thought that it was actually apples of gold like jewelry set in settings of silver. Essentially, the meaning is the same. That our words enhance the beauty of those apples, enhances the beauty of that, whether it be jewelry or real apples or a picture or whatever, by the setting, that our words fit into that. They are fitting words, a word fitly spoken. And today, when you walk out of here, the thing I want you to understand, the thing I want you to ask yourself and ask God to ask you this week is, do my words fit? Do my words fit? Do my words, when I come into a conversation, whether it is a brief conversation or a longer conversation, whatever it is, with someone who is a cashier at the bank or at the grocery store, does that person walk away feeling better about who they are? And have I said something to help them stay on the path that God has for them in their life? A word fitly spoken, like apples of gold in settings of silver. Well, it happens to all of us probably at some point in time. You ever had that pair of pants or that suit or that shirt that you just love, and you love it because, doggone it, you just look good in it? You know, you've had that. Nobody wants to raise their hand like, yeah, okay. But we all do. We all got that shirt or that pair of jeans or whatever. And you just, you put them on, they feel good. They fit on you. And when you look in the mirror, you're like, hey, this is good. But then it happens. One day you walk into the closet and you put it on, and they have shrunk. That pair of jeans is not the same size it used to be anymore. That shirt, those buttons are beginning to pull just ever so much. And what was fitting and what made you look really good doesn't so much anymore. Fit words. It's the same situation as our words, fitting a situation and making them look more attractive, more beautiful. So what are wise words? What are fitting words that we're talking about here in Proverbs? I would say this. Ask yourself this as you come into contact with these people that we talked about earlier. As you talk with your children, as you talk with your spouse, is that person, have I said something to that person that helps them to believe more in themselves, to believe that they have value? Have I said something to them that helps them become what God wants them to become, to keep them on the path that God has them on? Those are the kind of wise words we're talking about. I want to keep this as practical as I can, so I want to spend just a couple minutes this morning just talking with you about 3 specific areas that I think that we need to pay attention to that might help you. Maybe if you're a person who has a hard time speaking fitting words sometimes, you find unfitting words coming out of your mouth. The first word is the word tact, okay? If you've got your impact, you can write the word tact down, okay? T-A-C-T, all right? Although sometimes when we use it, it seems like more of an attack, okay? But the word is tact. It's the word that it means that there's a consideration about us, that we recognize that we use discretion when we approach a situation that may be delicate in some way, that we have what it takes to come into a situation or come into a conversation and read the situation or read the person and speak in a way that helps, speak in a way that builds up. Now, I said before, I'll say it again, that sometimes as Christians, we can use truth at times as an excuse for tact. Well, it's just true. I'm just stating what's true. And sometimes that truth is not spoken with grace, and it's very, very difficult to hear, and oftentimes it creates even more problems than there were begin. Sometimes we can say you statements, sometimes in marriage or in relationships, even with our children, whatever. In counseling, I tell people to stay away from you statements because you statements seem accusatory, and they corner people, and they put people on the defensive. I encourage people to make I statements, okay? Which means, we can say, well, here's how I feel, or here's how that made me feel in this situation, or here's what I perceive about that, all right? And that says, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I'm feeling, but it's not accusing that person's character or behavior, and it continues to keep open that path of communication. Sometimes as we get older, we have to work a little bit harder on tact, don't we? Raise your hand if you're over 50. Okay, I'm sorry to even ask, okay? All right, just wanted to have a reality moment there for a second, okay? Have you noticed a couple things happen when you're over 50? The first thing I noticed happens when you get over 50 is that AARP sends you something about every 36 hours in the mail. Right? You get that? I mean, constantly. You can get a new tote bag, you can get a new whatever. Just join AARP. The other thing that happens, it seems like, although it doesn't actually come in the mail, it seems like we get just about as often invitations to become a part of the I can be tacky because I'm over 50 club. You notice that? All of a sudden, do you find yourself saying things or thinking about saying things at 50? I think you think about it at 50. At 60, you consider it. At 70, it just comes all out. Seems to be that way, at least. When Dawn and I first got married, my grandma Molly was about this tall, little farm lady. And to my knowledge, as a grandson, I'd never heard Grandma Molly be tacky. Okay, I mean, she was always just nice, and nice hugs and nice cooking and all those kind of things that grandmas do. Grandma Molly was not able to come to Dawn and I's wedding, but the next time that we visited their house, she was sitting with Dawn, and here's what she said. She said, "Well, Dawn, someone told me that you were the cutest bride. Not the prettiest, mind you." Yeah, that's what first service did too. Not the prettiest, mind you, but the cutest. Now, in using that illustration, I had to check it with Dawn to make sure I got it right. And you know that her response 35 years later is about the same as it was the day after it happened. Words hurt. Words hurt, and we have to be careful, honestly. Honestly, I find within myself, for some reason, I don't know if because I think I'm wiser because I'm older and people are just begging for my wisdom, but I find myself sometimes really more apt to say something that I would not have considered saying 10 or 20 or 30 years ago, and I have to be careful, and I can only believe that it will get probably worse for us. Be very careful about that, all right? Not only tact, but also tone, all right? If you've taken Psychology 101 or read anything on communication, you know that only about 10% of communication is the actual words we use. What's the rest of it? It's body language. It's saying, I don't hear anything you say. I'm not going to do anything you say. It's the rolling of the eyes. It's unmarked facial expressions, letting all our emotions show. The kind of things that make our words unfitting and unwise. We can say to a person, to our spouse, "Hey, could you help me clean up the room?" Okay? That's perfectly legit and probably will be heard. We can cross our arms and say, "Hey, could you help me clean up the room?" Exact same words. Very different meaning. Probably a different reception. We can say to our ex-spouse, "Hey, could you help me with the kids with camp this summer?" Or we can say to them, "Could you help me with the kids with camp this summer?" Same words. Very different tone. One becomes unfitting where the other is fitting. One probably is going to get a pretty bad response. You can count on it because of body language and because of tone and maybe because of volume. And I just say that anytime our volume grows, typically the message is lost. If your volume goes up, the message is lost. I know why we yell. I know why we get more intense. It's to make our point. The ironic thing is that at the point in time our voice becomes more intense or our level of our volume goes up, guess what happens? Our point is lost. Because all that person can hear is, "I don't like you, I'm angry at you." They just kind of hear this big cloud of emotion. They never hear often what point you are wanting to make with them, even if it's a good and fitting one. Tact and tone are important, and timing is important too. And I don't want to spend much time on this, but it's important. Because if you've ever been bushwhacked at the end of the day, walking into the front door of your house, or walking around into the kitchen at the end of the day, or even if you've bushwhacked your spouse, if you've bushwhacked your child, or you've been bushwhacked, this is uncomfortable, and these are very rarely fitting words. They do not add or make more valuable or beautiful the situation or the person. So we have to be careful of the timing. Someone told me one time, and I think this is very, very wise, that for us to bring up a conflict we have with someone, especially a spouse or a child in a car, is very, very rarely a good idea. Because there's no possible way for that person to look at you and give you the eye contact. There's no way for them to leave if things begin to heat. You're just there and in the car. So we have to be careful of the timing, tact, and tone, time. Before I go on, let me lay on one more T on you, okay? And that comes in the way of texting, okay? How many of you are into texting? I told myself years ago I wouldn't do it. Now I send, 400 out a day, it seems like. Texting and social media. Hey, here's what, have you noticed this happen? Have you noticed that texting and social media, anytime we have a keypad in front of us, our fingers, we get what I call brave fingers. You know what brave fingers are, aren't you? Brave fingers are fingers that will type words and things that we would never let come out of our mouth. I mean, we get typing on that little keyboard and we're just letting them have it, I mean, we can become like Navy fighter pilots sometimes with our language when we're texting someone or when we're doing social media stuff. All of a sudden, these emotions and words come out. We have to be careful. Very rarely are those fitting words. And just practically, because all that person is seeing is the words, they can't see your body language, they can't see your face, they can't hear your tone, they don't know anything about it, they just see the words. Most of the time, those words go awry and are misinterpreted, and very rarely does anything good come out of that situation. I was with someone a number of years ago who was showing me something their ex-spouse was sending to them, and I knew their ex-spouse, knew the kind of character they had. I never heard them swear at all, and they showed me this particular text. I could not believe the kind of language I was seeing in that text. Brave fingers had hit again, all right? We need to be careful. We need to be careful of that. Folks, there's all kinds of things. Fitting words are not always encouraging words. Fitting words can be challenging words sometimes. Fitting words can be in a parenting role or even from friend to friend. Fitting words can be words that sometimes are actually disciplining words. Words where you go to someone and you speak the truth to them because you see them in a real mess in their lives and they continue to make wrong decisions. And we go to them in love, and hopefully we go to them with grace, but we speak the truth in a way to them. Sometimes people don't accept discipline very well. Actually, at the end of this verse, in chapter 25, 11, verse 12 talks about a person responding to discipline rightly. It's a good thing. A couple months ago, my son Lane and his wife Kelly had their grandsons at our house. Their youngest, Knox, is 4. And the Knox, I think the word Knox means hard head. Okay? And he just makes me laugh, but he is giving his mom and dad a run for their money, I will tell you. And so we were sitting there, and Uma, Dawn, had chocolate donuts out, and Knox had more than his share of these little chocolate donuts, okay? They're up on the island, and so he could just kind of reach up there, and he had a number of them. And so he walked by his dad, getting ready to get another chocolate donut. And Lane said this to him, said, "Knox, you cannot have another chocolate donut." Knox looked at me and said, "Knox, if you have another chocolate donut, I'm going to take you into the bedroom. I'm going to have to Dad's going to have to spank you." And Knox stopped for a couple minutes. We got involved in conversation. About 2 minutes later, we looked, and Knox was coming out of the kitchen, licking his fingers from that chocolate donut. He walked right past us into the bedroom where the discipline was to take place. It was worth it. He had counted the cost. People do not always heed our discipline, even when spoken wisely. Sometimes a fitting word, I was reminded as I was putting these notes together, sometimes a fitting word is just this. Sometimes a fitting word is no word at all, isn't it? I mean, sometimes the thing that fits is just for us just to be quiet. God says to me sometimes, because of the amount of words that I speak in my life and out of my personality, sometimes he just whispers ever so gently in the voice of a loving father, "Shut up. Just don't say anything. There's nothing you can say here that's going to add anything at all." Sometimes a fitting word is no word at all. And folks, I'll just say that I really believe, and I know it's not this easy, but I just wanted to make this practical. But when we pay attention to that person as they walk away and they're watching them, when we pay attention to tact, when we pay attention to our tone, our volume, when we pay attention to the timing that we speak with people, and we pay attention to our social media and those kind of things, I believe our words become fitting words, all right? And we need that in this world where so many unfitting words are being spoken. Let me remind you again that we're not talking about nice words necessarily. That's not the purpose of it, just to be a nice person. We are people who God has placed here, and our specific conversations, and when we come into another person's presence, that is not a surprise to God. That is not a coincidence. Those things are ordained, whether they last 10 seconds or whether they last 10 hours or 10 days, those are ordained. And God has a plan for you and I to speak truth and grace and love in some way, encouragement, maybe a challenge, maybe a rebuke, into that person's life. And we need to make sure that we are doing it in a way that is fitting, like apples of gold in settings of silver. It enhances the worth and beauty of that person's life and what is going on in their life. Value and worth. You know, when I was in high school, I lifted weights for a while just as part of, being in a football team. And one of the things our coach taught us is that as you increased your weights, that you would always have spotters. And usually if you were doing like some kind of a squat or something, you had weights on your back or almost anything, free weights especially, that he would have spotters. And those spotters would stand on either side of you, and they would literally stand with their hands underneath the weights. And two things, there was a couple of things they would do. They would speak to you like, hey man, you get to your last couple of your reps, and you're just straining and you don't think you can get there, and they would say, come on, you can do this. You can do this. They would speak those words into you and that encouragement. They would build you up. You can do this. But if they begin to see that you weren't going to be able to do it, guess what? They would put their hand just gently on the weight, just to make sure it didn't come crushing down on you. Make sure if they needed it, and then they would kind of feel whether they needed to give you a little help or a lot of help to get that weight completed. I've never had a spotter in my life go, boy, I don't know, Steve. I don't think you're going to get that one. I just don't think you got it in you to get that up. No, they spoke encouragement. They spoke what it took to build you up, to allow you to finish the task that was at hand. We need to become, in speaking fitting words, we need to become verbal spotters. Standing there and looking and paying attention to what needs to be done to the situation to make sure the person succeeds in his life. Well, some of you have heard me talk about my dad in my life. And it was interesting because originally James was going to speak on this, and when I talked with him, I said, what do you plan on sharing? And he said, I was going to talk about your dad. It's like, really? You know why? And this is none of my doing, because my dad, over the last 30 plus years that James and I have worked together, has been quite an encourager to James McCracken. Didn't really even know that. When he sees him, he always tells him how much he appreciates the ministry there and tries to encourage his family and those kind of things. My dad is one of those guys who's a verbal spotter. My dad comes into situations looking to speak encouragement. My dad looks for a person, he's a realist, and he's worked in a tough situation, tough job in his life. Lots of difficult conversations as he was basically an advisor for international students from all over the world at an engineering university. He had lots of opportunities every day where he could choose life or death. He could change the course of a person's life. And I've had the opportunity to be his son, where when he calls me now still, my dad will say before he hangs up the phone, he will always say these things, son, I love you. And second, I want you always to know I'm proud of you. And then he will pick out different areas of my life, as a dad or as a husband or as a pastor that he'll say, you're good. You're a good dad, Steve. You're a good husband. And you and I know. You and I know how often in those roles in our life we don't feel like we're good. A lot of days I don't feel like a good husband. Lots of days I did not feel like a good parent. Lots of days I don't feel good about the job that I do here. And my dad, regardless of what is going on, and I'm 54 now, and if I picked up the phone and had a conversation with him that you could hear, before I hung up the phone, he would say, I love you, and I'm proud of you, and you are a good at what you're doing. And you know what? I never, ever, I don't know if I'll ever get tired of hearing those words. And I've not only had that opportunity of hearing those things, I've also had the opportunity to follow my dad around. And I followed him as he went around the university, and he spoke the same fitting, encouraging kind of words to the custodian as he did to the chancellor at the very, very top of the ladder. I've heard people that he has served with on church boards and other boards talk to me and say to me, man, I think your dad's one of the most positive people I know. Folks, you know, it's not, I just say that as this example. Are you and I speaking those kind of fitting, encouraging, life-building, and giving words to people that we come into contact? Are we doing that with our spouses? Huh? Are you and I doing that with our children? Are we doing that with our grandchildren? Sometimes the ones closest to us are the ones that catch the most heat and the most the tackiness and sometimes the sarcasm and the criticism. I want to say this to you because it's a great illustration of what's happening in our congregation that I love so much. Dawn, my wife, is our children's minister, and a couple weeks ago, Shawnee St, who had lost her husband Gideon about 6 weeks ago or so, they had wanted, before Gideon passed away, they had wanted to have a pizza party for the kids. So Gideon passed away about 2 weeks ago. I walked back there and they had pizza for all the kids. And Dawn said this to all the kids. She said, Gideon and Pauline wanted to have pizza for you guys when Gideon got better. And guess what, kids? And Dawn said, Steve, it was the craziest thing. She said, before I could finish the sentence, all 85 or 90 of those kids yelled out, he got better. And he did, didn't he? And that's not intended just to be a sweet thing about our kids. That says this to me. That says that we have got parents who are speaking truth, eternal truth, into kids' lives, and those kids are getting it. See, it pays off because we speak life and death, sometimes literally. And we have the power to change the course. And those kids' lives are being changed. I came home from a 24-hour event 3 weeks ago with some of our 5th and 6th graders. 3 of the boys shared with me before we left, kids that they wanted to share the gospel with, friends that they knew needed Jesus. I wasn't thinking like that when I was that age. Our parents, this church is doing an amazing job of speaking fitting, powerful, truthful words into the lives of these children. I love that. And speaking of that, here's my challenge to you today. John 1 says, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us, and we have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. Well, we could spend some time on that, but we're not going to. Jesus, the New Testament says, is called the Word, and he comes full of grace and truth. Doesn't that sound like a fitting word? Full of grace and truth. Here's my challenge. My challenge to you is this, that everyone here, that each one of you here would think of 2 people for me right now. 2 people, one person that you know in your life, no matter whether they're close, someone you work with, someone in your family, a friend, a neighbor, that just needs to hear a fitting word of encouragement, something that would build them up, not flattery, but going to their situation and speaking a fitting word to them. The second person is this. Like those 3 boys who came back from that Superstart convention with me, I want you to think about someone that you know who needs to hear simply the story of what Jesus has done in your life and the transformation he has made. I had a young man tell me last week that he had a chance for the first time in his life to share the gospel and his story with what Jesus did with his Father. And he said to me, Steve, he said, I wasn't even afraid of what to say. It was like God just gave me the words to say. And he said, my dad heard it from me, Steve. That's pretty exciting. So one person that you can encourage, and the second person that you can think about, that you can just set simply and say, hey, all I can tell you is what Jesus is doing for me. I haven't arrived, but here's what he's doing in my life. Fitting words like apples of gold and settings of silver. And folks, listen. There is a community, there are the people out there, one after another, standing in line, who so need the fitting word, who so need an encouraging word, who so need just to hear a simple truth about Jesus in their life. What if we stepped out of here today as a body of believers, as a family whose lives are being transformed in some way by Jesus, somewhere along the path, and we decided that we would be a people who speak a fitting, wise word this week, that our eyes would be open, and we would speak into people's lives truth and life. Instead of sarcasm, instead of cynicism, instead of bad humor, instead of profanity, we would speak those kind of words of life into someone's life. What a difference it would make in a day, in a week, in a month, in this community, if we would become the people who speak the fitting word of Jesus. As we come to this invitation time, let me just remind you this simply. Jesus is the Word. And He is a word that always fits. No matter your situation, no matter where you're at, no matter what you've got chained around your ankles, no matter what you've struggled with, no matter where you're at in your life, who you have lost, what you have found, what you're trying to get by with, Jesus fits your life. He is the fitting word. We encourage you this morning as we sing Him invitation to come and ask questions this morning, or accept Him into your life as the fitting word, or to become a part of a community of believers that is intent on connecting and making an impact on this community. Let's stand as we sing together.